Okay. So yeah, so one of the technologies that they have in terms of infrastructure is the Temple of Abu Simbel. So this was actually designed to house the different. It was supposed to be a burial site for the for pharaohs back then, which started off with Ramses and the god of Amun. However, because of technology also, this caused the actual place to be flooded. So if you're going to go to Egypt, if in case may konting barya kayo and you want to visit Egypt, the one that you're going to see, the Abu Simbel then or the Valley of the Kings, it's no longer there. It's actually underneath water. Okay, they had to flood this because they created a dam on this area. So they just constructed another one. Um, but if you have gears, you can actually visit underwater yung original na temple. Okay? Then, of course, another of the technology that they're very famous for is the structure called the pyramids. Okay, so the pyramids is actually made using, according to the theory of the development of the pyramid, they were created using the ramp system. So they have series of wood planks on top of stones. Okay, so yung stones sila, dinagyan nila ng pinatong-patong nila yon. They had wood on it and they were able to um, bring up piles of big stones. Yung stones na yan, it's not really in their area. They have to migrate it from along different place. Kaya nga, if you are familiar with alien conspiracy, they were believing that the aliens helped the Egyptians create it. Pero science-wise, mas pananiniwalaan yung RAND system. Now, the reason some of those information are no longer available because they did not leave any information behind. They did not tell on the walls of their coffins or yung walls ng burial chamber nila kung paano ginawa yung mismong pyramids. Okay? Yan. So, yan. So they used the ramp theory. So they started off with a stone block on sled. So inihila nila yan, tinali nila yon. And they use water. Ito, pinatapon niya or nilalagyan niya ng tubig yung mismong sled para mas madali siyang i-push out, mahila. Okay? And then ipoposition nila using sticks on the position, on the actual pyramid itself. Now, another technology that they have aside from the infrastructure are the hieroglyphs. Now, the hieroglyphs are actually one of the earliest language followed by the Sumerians, following Sumerians rather, and this is actually using pictures. So it actually ages goes back at 3100 BC to 3000 BC, and it has been used for a long, long time. Okay, okay guys, baka maulan sa inyo ha. Stay safe, stay dry. Okay. Yan. So here's an example of those writings. It's engraved. Yung una po is naka-engrave sa walls or sa stone. So it's almost similar to the engraving of the writings of the Sumerians. Yung nga lang sa kanila, they did not use wedges. They used pictures. So this is actually what they call a cartouche. This is a name. Pangalan to. Lalo na yung may ganito, guys. Higher, royalty ang mga yan. Basta may bilog sa taas. Okay? Basta may bilog siya na ganito, pangalan 'to ng isang pharaoh or royalty. Okay? So, yan. So, here are more examples. So, the term hieroglyphs actually came from the word sacred carvings and Egyptian words, and it's how they are able to inscribe the information on the walls. Okay? And they can actually see this information in tombs, papyrus, and also wooden boards, potsherds, and fragments of limestone. Okay. They also invented the black ink. So for them, they actually use vegetable gum, soot, and beeswax to make the black ink. And then later on, pinalitan nila yung suit with other materials like ochre to make various colors. So meron na silang 50 shades of black, ika nga nila. Okay? Kaya nga 'di ba, if you're going to remember sa Egyptian, may mahilig sila sa eyeliner at ang eyeliner ay hindi lang limited sa babae, meron din sa lalaki. Okay? Then papyrus sheets. Okay? So papyrus sheets is actually made up of papyrus which is the one that they use. So ito yung mismong papyrus. So, siya siyang parang ano, damo, okay? So this is actually the material. So remember when we discussed about how paper was developed in the past? Dalawa yon. It's Chinese or it is Chinese or Egyptian. So this is the actual process how it is being done. So it was actually found out in 1965 how the papyrus sheet was made. Okay, so it's coming from Yusadamo, which is found in the Nile River, which is papyrus, and it's so thick, it's so sturdy na kung saan yung mismong papyrus can be combined to form sandals, pati barko, not barko, bangka. Okay, so kukuha lang sila ng papyrus, itatali nila yung papyrus at pwede na nilang sakyan yon. Okay, kung sa atin, di ba, it's either use coconut para kang gumawa ng balsa or yung bamboo, tatali mo yung mga bamboo tapos puwede ka ng ano, sa kanila hindi, yung mismong damo ang gagamitan nila, okay. So what they did is they use the internal part and then they combine it to fill up your papyrus sheet. So this is actually how papyrus is made, okay.
Ancient Egypt. The ancient Egyptians believed in several rituals in order to reach the afterlife, into the next world, and achieve immortality. Death was seen as a temporary state, and a dead person's spirit needed a body. So to preserve it, a process of mummification was used. This process and quality of the mummification varied depending on the person's status and wealth. The highest ranks in society got the best method of preservation after they died. Firstly, the body was washed in water and salt. The brain was then removed and discarded, using a hook through the nostrils. The body was then slit open and the organs were removed, except for the heart, which the ancient Egyptians believed would guide the person into the afterlife. The liver, lungs, intestines, and stomach were kept and placed in 4 canopic jars, one for each organ. These jars each featured a lid sculpted as one of the sons of Horus: Hapi, who protected the lungs; Duamutef, the stomach; Imseti, the liver; and Qebessennef, the intestines. The body was then filled with myrrh, cassia, and other spices, then sewn up together and packed with a special salt called natron for up to 70 days, which prevented the flesh from rotting. After this process, the body was shriveled and dehydrated, so the embalmers would stuff the empty body with sawdust and linen to bring it back to its original shape, oil the skin to soften it, and add false eyes and a wig to make the corpse more lifelike. A resin was used to cover the body to prevent mold, and then the whole corpse was wrapped in layers of linen bandages. A face mask was made to look like the person, then was placed on the head of the corpse, and the body was placed into a wooden case, or if the person were rich, a stone sarcophagus. Mummies would be buried with items they might have needed for the afterlife, including jewelry, clothes, furniture, even pet cats and dogs who were mummified as well to keep them company. The less expensive method for the middle classes, or those who wished to avoid the expense, involved the corpse being injected with oil taken from cedar trees, liquefying the internal organs. It was then packed with natron for up to 70 days and given back to the family. The Egyptian embalmers were so skilled that even today, people that were mummified thousands of years ago still have some recognizable features. Subscribe for more history videos, and don't forget to click the notification. Mummification. Ancient Egypt.
Ancient Egypt crops. The Egyptians were one of the first groups on Earth to begin farming probably around 10,000 BC, but definitely by 5,200 BC. At first people farmed by just digging a hole in the ground for each seed with a stick, as you do when you plant a vegetable garden in your backyard. But that's hard work and slow. It is particularly hard in Egypt, because the heavy, clayey soil laid down by the Nile floods is hard to make for ozone. So by around 3000 BC people in Egypt had invented the animal-drawn plow, which made planting a lot easier. As soon as the flood began to recede, the ancient Egyptians plowed the soil ready for sowing. They had hand plows or larger ones that were pulled by oxen. Seeds were then sown into the newly plowed soil. Goats and other animals then walked over the fields to push the seeds into the ground. Crops grown included wheat, barley, flax, onions, leeks, garlic, beans, lettuce, lentils, cabbages, radishes, turnips, grapes, figs, plums and melons. There were two seasons that affected farming: growing season and harvest season. In the harvest season you may not have been able to harvest the wheat you wanted because your landlord may have made you cut his first. The tools used in ancient Egypt agriculture included plows, sickles, hoes, forks, scoops, baskets, shaduf, skiffs and sieves. The farmers also used cattle, oxen, donkey, and goats to aid in the cultivation of their fields. In the cultivation of grain, there were 8 steps that the ancient farmer knew as well as he knew his own land. The cultivated land was plowed with a wooden axe. The fruit grown consisted of dates, figs, grapes, pomegranates, and melons. Due to the wonderful variety of flowers grown in ancient Egypt, bees were able to pollinate and produce honey. The pharaoh got the rich peasants to do the farm work on the rich lands. The peasants worked as either reapers or gleaners. The reapers went through the fields first and they did work such as plowing the field to loosen the dirt for the seeds to go in, or they would winnow. Winnowing means to get the debris off of grain. The ancient Egyptians were thorough in their cultivation of grain, as it was their main staple. Barley and emmer were used to make bread and beer. Excessive grain was exported to neighboring countries. This exportation of grain allowed the Egyptian treasury to accumulate income. Some exporting of crops also took place. As far as agricultural products are concerned, mostly grains were exported. Ox, cattle and donkeys were used to pull equipment, and pigs, sheep, and goats were sometimes used to cover seeds, so that the task needn't be done by hand.
Two The shaduf or shaduf was an ancient tool used to draw water for irrigational purposes. It was the earliest form of water-raising machine which drew water from a lower level to a higher level. The earliest known use of shadufs was in Mesopotamia, Egypt, some other African and Asian areas. The shaduf basically comprised of a frame erected on the ground. On this frame a long pole or branch was suspended. Towards the long end of the pole a container, like a bucket or basket, was hung, and the shorter end was used for the purpose of carrying the weight, thus balancing the two ends of the pole. The bucket or the container was slowly lowered towards the water body and water was filled in it. This water was then poured over the area where the irrigation activity was to take place. The ancient technique of drawing water using a shaduf has been replaced today by new inventions. However, some people in Egypt still follow the practice of drawing water using shaduf, thus retaining the traditional method.
The ancient Egyptian calendar was known as a solar calendar. With a 365-day year. A solar calendar is a calendar whose dates indicate the season based on the apparent position of the sun. The ancient Egyptian year consisted of 3 seasons that were 4 months long each. At the end of the year, they added 5 additional days, which were treated as outside of the year. These were in honor of the Egyptian gods. Life of the ancient Egyptians revolved around the 3 seasons. The first season was Akhet, the season of inundation, or the time of the flood. Season 2 was known as Peret, or the time of growth. Season 3 was known as Shemu, or the time of harvest. At the end of the 30th day of the 12th month of the year began the 5 epigomenal days, known as Heru Renpet. These 5 special days were dedicated to the 5 children of Nut, which were Osiris, Horus the Elder, Set, Isis, and Nephthys. With a 365-day year. The ancient Egyptian calendar